Hello, my name is Peter Parf and welcome to the New Brick Workshop. It's very kind of several people to ask after my well-being, as I haven't been on YouTube a lot lately. The reason is quite simple. A couple of months ago I started a major project at the house. It wasn't suitable for videoing. It was fascias and soffits and new guttering. Anyway, as soon as I finished that, we had a really cold bit of weather here in the UK, and the temperature here inside the workshop went down to 3 degrees centigrade. And that's too cold, really. It's too cold to work. It's dangerous if you work in those sort of temperatures with machinery. Anyway, I'm back now. In this time, I've had quite a few people asking me questions about Tracksaw cutting stations and the Parf guide system. So I'm going to try and cover all of those queries in one go. And just for the newcomers, before I start, I'll just tell you what a Tracksaw cutting station is. This is my Tracksaw cutting station. It's a slab of 19mm MDF, and I believe this to be the perfect material to make a Tracksaw cutting station with. And the idea is that your Tracksaw cutting station has rows and columns of 20mm holes. And in those holes you can put various types of dogs. And this is a tall one, and you may be able to see here there are 3 shorter ones, okay? Now, if you have 2 tall ones like this, and they're in a column, and you have some short ones in a row, then when you push a piece of wood up against there, the angle between the top edge of the wood and the edge of these 2 tall dogs is 90 degrees. And you can then have a track. And this is a track made by Festool, and this is a Tracksaw. It's a Festool TS55, and because the tall dogs are in a column and the short dogs are in a row and they're perfect 90 degrees, when the track is absolutely against these tall dogs, the wood is against those short dogs, and you do a cut with your Tracksaw, it's going to be a really good 90-degree cut. I won't say perfect because it depends on how you produce the Tracksaw cutting station or whether you buy one ready-made. If you produce one with the Parf guide system, it's going to be jolly near perfect to within 0.001 of a degree. Anyway, that's what a Tracksaw cutting station is. You don't just use it for sheet goods, you can use it to cut any piece of wood you like, as long as the wood's pushed firmly against those shallow dogs up there. And when it's a fairly narrow piece of wood like that, you have a piece to support the lower end of the track. Put your track back on, like so, and obviously you would set the saw depth accordingly, and then you can cut again at perfect 90-degree cut. So any material that you can cut with a Tracksaw can be set up in a Tracksaw cutting station. And what this actually means is that you're almost doing away with a miter saw. If you really are pushed for cash, then get this set up rather than a miter saw. Or perhaps go for a cheaper miter saw because you can do your accurate cuts on this. Now, I've been using these guide pups. These are the little ones, the shallow ones, along here. And along the line where the guide rail is going to go, the tall dogs are these Parf super dogs. But there are other ways of setting this up. For example, now these expanding dogs made by Axminster under the UJK name, and they perform the function of the super dogs, but they're a lot simpler and a little bit less expensive. And they come in 4 sizes, so the equivalent size to the pups is this size here. And all you do is you push it down into a 20mm hole which has a chamfer at the top here, push it down and then twist. And when you want to get it out, you untwist and push it out like so. So that's an alternate way of doing it. But what I now need to talk about is how we go about making a Tracksaw cutting station, and this is really important. You don't have to use dogs like this at all. And here I have this really super duper fence, again from Axminster under the UJK name. It's got dogs which fix onto it and allow it to be fixed onto the table, and it means that you can position this anywhere on the Tracksaw cutting station and achieve the same functionality for smaller pieces of wood. Anyway, enough of that. Let's now concentrate on the Tracksaw cutting station itself. Now, I'm not making this video to teach you how to go about creating your Tracksaw cutting station. I will assume that you've either seen one of my videos or you've done it yourself already. But what I am going to concentrate on some of the common errors that people make and some of the tips that I can give you to help you make a better job or something more useful. So let's have a look first of all at how my Tracksaw cutting station is supported. Now, I've got a pair of trestles and I made these a very long time ago, and they're actually really sturdy, but they're very simple to make, and I made a video about that a while ago. Now, the trestle has like a U-shaped bit here, and I've got a piece of wood that fits in that U-shape, and then to that I've screwed 3 cross members, and it's exactly the same at the other end. So now I've got support for my Tracksaw cutting station along its full length. And I've now just turned this round so it's the other way round than you saw before. So this is the side I'd operate from, and that's the side that you were looking from in the earlier part of this video. I'm now going around the other side so I can talk about the first bit of advice. Now, a lot of people make Tracksaw cutting stations which are longer or wider than one of these rulers. Now, it's really important that the very first bit of drilling you do when you put your ruler down for the first time on the undrilled top, that this ruler is as close to being central as your design allows. In other words, you've got the equal amount of space there and equal amount of space there. And the reason for that is that you will want to extend your pattern of holes that way and that way. And it's more accurate if you start in the middle and do a small extension that way, being able to fix this ruler in place in at least 2 really good places here, and also do the same in the other direction, again fixing in a couple of places so you can extend that way. If you were to start like this and then extend that way, you would only have a very small amount of sort of extra registration over here, and there's a risk that you might get some inaccuracy building up there. So to reduce that, start in the middle, do a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, and then that will help. That's the first bit. Now, I've brought you in closer now so that I can now show you a common error. And what we're imagining now is we're doing the very first bit of drilling. And in order to do that, you would probably say, right, I want my pattern of holes to be such that the first hole will be about here. Now, I've put a revision dog in here so that I can put a 3mm pin through there to fix the ruler. And I've done the same thing up here. Now, let's suppose we've drilled our first hole. The first thing I want to point out is when you get one of these pins in, you've got to make sure it's seated properly. And it's too easy to have it such that the little 6mm boss here is not properly in the 6mm hole in the ruler. So make sure it is, and there that one is sitting. Now, so we've then said, right, well, we want to drill all these holes along here, and ordinarily we would now clamp this in place, something like this, and then we would use the 3mm drill guide and drill a 3mm hole all the way through. And once we've done that, we would then put a pin in, like so, to hold the ruler at both ends. Right, that's fine. Now I'm going to bring you in really close to this bit, about the middle. Okay, so our ruler is fixed at both ends with those pins. Now look carefully. It is possible, if one uses enough force, to make the ruler move, probably by as much as 1mm in each direction. You can probably just about see that. And the reason why this is something to be aware of is that if you're now about to drill the 3mm hole just here, and you've attached your drill in your drill, and you're about to start drilling, and because of the way you're doing it, you you're trying to hold this still and you're putting a bit of pressure, but you're accidentally moving the ruler either that way or that way. Well, that can lead to inaccuracies, and it really does show up later on when you're trying to then fill in all the little holes in between two parallel columns or rows. And so you need to now make sure that there is no movement when you do this drilling. Now, what I do is I hold it with my fingers over the edge of the ruler so that I can then detect if I'm accidentally making it move one way or the other, because you'd feel it with your fingers. Another way of doing it is to use a clamp before you do the drilling. So I've got this clamp, and I could use this clamp to hold it in place. But there is a danger in applying a clamp. It is possible when you tighten a clamp up, because the two faces don't move quite uniformly together, they may be going at a slight skew, that as you tighten the clamp, so the clamp makes the ruler move either that way a little bit or that way. Unfortunately, I can't demonstrate it with this clamp, but I hope you understand what I'm getting at. So that means if you're going to use a clamp, again, try and use some process that before you tighten it up, you have your fingers across there, and you then make sure that as you tighten, there's no movement of the ruler. Okay? So just be aware that that could happen. Then, after you've drilled this middle hole, and we'll pretend I have, and in order to pretend I have, I'm going to just put this little Parf revision dog in there. Let's put this back in place. And once you've drilled that hole, then put a pin in. And you see that pin went in really nicely, and without the ruler moving either way. So that now is sufficient. So you don't need to worry about that flexing effect, because I must tell you, it is impossible to make this ruler flex between two pins which are only 5 divisions apart. That's an important thing to watch out for. So let me go back to the reason why we set the first ruler in the middle and then extend equally left and equally right. Well, let me just move this over now, and we know that this ruler should be in this position. Now we'd have drilled all of the 3mm holes out to here, because they're down to there somewhere, and the last one was this one here, where I had that pin in just now. So the trick now for extending is to put a pin in here into this 3mm hole, and then a pin in here. Notice how I lift the ruler so that I can now seat the 6mm boss on the pin into the ruler, and then I can then, after that, push it in, and that's still seated. That means now I've got the maximum distance possible along here between 2 of my original pinholes, and then I can now use the drill guide and drill the remaining holes going that way. And I'd do exactly the same going in the other direction. And that gives you the most accurate way of creating a larger Tracksaw cutting station. Now, I've been asked a number of times questions from people who are trying to drill a top, which rather than being made of 19mm MDF, is made of much thicker material. They asked, how do they go about it? Well, one of the problems is that the drill guide, there's the guide and there's the drill holder. When you put the two together, you need to have this part of the drill holder registering in sufficient length or depth of the drill guide so that the tip of the drill is pretty well centered. Now, if I push this all the way in, the maximum depth in the material is going to be about 22mm. That's a factor of not only how long this drill is that sticks out, but it's also a factor of how much that registration and the important registration of the surface here and the inner bearing surface of the guide. Right, so having a longer drill would just mean this would be coming out here somewhere, and there would be no guiding whatsoever from the drill guide itself. So how do you go about it? Well, this is my advice. First of all, don't use tops thicker than 19 millimeters, but I know some of you need to because of what you have in mind. So this is how you should go about it. Now you have to forgive me, my pretend bit of worktop is this lump of wood. And we'll imagine this is the depth, this is 40 millimeters. And so what you would do is you would use your ruler in the normal way, the drill guide and the drill as it's supplied to drill the holes to the maximum depth possible, which, as I said, is about 22 millimeters. And then what you need to do is to somehow, don't ask me where, get a longer 3 millimeter drill that fits into the drill hole and can be secured, but it sticks out further through the bottom here. And then along those holes you've already drilled, you re-drill them to a greater depth. And this time you have to ensure that the drill which has been mounted in here is going into the hole that already exists sufficiently for the drill guide and the drill holder to be in union in this thicker area here. And then you continue to do the drill through. That's one way. Now the other way of doing it is, let's supposing again you've got this thick top and you've done that first stage using the drill and the drill guide as it comes in the kit. And then having done all of the holes across your thick worktop, you then choose two of them which are at either extremes of the ruler apart and very carefully drill those all the way through to the other side. You then flip your worktop over, and using the rulers and using the Parf guide system as originally intended, you then create the 3 millimeter hole pattern from the underside, and the theory being that 22 mil plus 22 mil, you should be able to go to a top which is about 44 millimeters in thickness. Well, let's call it 43 to be on the safe side. So therefore you've got a 3 millimeter hole going all the way through. Flip it back the original way, and then you drill out using again the kit as supplied, the 20 millimeter holes to the maximum depth that you can, which is just over 22 millimeters. So you've now got these holes which go halfway through your material, and you do that all over, flip it over, and because the accuracy of your dogs is achieved in the first 15 to 19 millimeters of it going into the worktop, you don't actually need to worry that what happens beyond that, because that top bit of the dog going in the hole does the accurate bit. So what you can then do with it, with the top upside down, is to drill it out by hand using a 25 millimeter drill, but making sure that you stop before you get to the last 19 or 20 millimeters, which is on the other side. So therefore you're effectively producing clearance holes underneath. And that's a more accurate way of doing it than the first method which I described. It's up to you. But my bottom line advice is just use a 19 millimeter thick piece of MDF. And incidentally, the MDF that I recommend is Medite moisture resistant MDF. It's absolutely brilliant. Really, really good quality. A bit more expensive than normal MDF, but go for it. And it is available throughout North America if you try hard enough to find it. Now the next thing I want to talk about is the choice of hole pattern. Now this top that I've created here, and remember you're sitting at the end where the operator would operate from if he's using it as a tracksaw cutting station, so you would be standing there. And my recommendation is that you use some offset holes. And the first pair of offset holes, or first offset hole rather, should be this way. This is the top end, the furthest away from you when you're using it. One here. That allows the tall dog that would be here to be a step away from the fence or the row of shorter dogs that would be there. And the reason for that is that with some tracksaws, towards the end of the cut, it's possible that the motor mechanism or something might foul on this dog. It doesn't with my setup, but it could do. So having an offset hole there is an advantage. My next bit of advice is where your kerf line is going to be. That's my kerf line, and I don't know if you can see, but just there is a 3mm hole, which would have been one of the ones in my pattern of 20mm holes, but I have deliberately not drilled it out. The reason for that is it would sit on my kerf line. There is one which I've drilled out and it's there, but ignore that, that's for other purposes. Ordinarily I wouldn't drill out any of the holes to 20mm that sit on the kerf line. Next is, going back to offset holes, where do you create them? Well, certainly I would make the provision when you do your setup to leave some 3mm holes in various places, so that if at a later stage you want to have offset holes for whatever reason, you can go back just with the drill block and the 20mm drill and enlarge them. In the area close to where you're going to have the tall dog, I've actually put in some extra holes, and these are at 48mm spacing. If I were drilling this out from scratch, I would probably have the same there. So you've got a pattern here. And the reason is that that's to help me with jig work. And it may be you've got ideas in your mind that would require you to do things like that somewhere else. So just think about how you're going to use it and drill whatever offset holes you think you might need in the future. Next bit of advice. I've drilled this top not only to be able to do 90 degrees and 45 degrees, but also 30 and 60. And I did that because at the time I was making some bits and pieces which required cuts at 60 degrees. And so I thought it was a good idea. Since then, I've not used it. So think very carefully whether you actually need to do any of these additional holes which give you the 30 or 60 degree capability. And if you don't think you'll need them, don't drill them out. You can always go back using these revision dogs. These are the ones which fit into the hole and they've just got a 3mm hole in the middle. You can always go back and sort that out at a later stage if you need to. Now my final tip or bit of advice is about the actual holes themselves after they've been in existence for a while. MDF certainly, when you get changes in moisture level, will form a sort of like an extra bit of furriness which seems to grow inside a hole. It's just the way it is. And so it does mean that after a while, and I think this might be one of the holes, no it's not, let me see if I can find it. I'm looking for a hole which is tight. Ah, yeah, here we go. Here's one which I haven't used for a very long time. And after a while, even though it was drilled out in the proper way originally, you find a dog won't fit in easily. Now knowing this, we have come up with a tool, and there are two of them available, which is a reamer. This particular one is a reamer and it also does the chamfer at a hole. You put one of these in the drill, just make sure, yeah, that's the tricky hole just there, and you very carefully in one go I've reamed that, and with this one done the little bit of chamfering, and you'll find now your dog fits in beautifully. So it's useful to have one of these because after 6 months, or maybe even less, depending on how the moisture level changes, because even a hole which is nicely fitting may actually get a little bit furry on the inside. I'm not sure about the behaviour of plywood, which some people use, or other materials, but certainly that is true for MDF. There is another tool which is just the reamer on its own. It's a little bit cheaper. Well, that's it. I hope this bit of advice and these tips have helped. Many thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.